Now, more of Illinois Rising, presented by the Illinois Policy Institute, the only show directly addressing the problems and solutions for Illinois. Now, from AM 560, here's Dan Proft.
Dan Proft back with Pat Hughes, co-founder of the Illinois Opportunity Project, on this edition of Illinois Rising. And Pat, the grand bargain that was defeated just a couple of weeks ago is back. This is the handiwork of Senate Superminority Leader Christine Radogno and Senate President John Cullerton. The idea of a permanent or perhaps a temporary increase in the state income tax, along with maybe some other taxes or fees. You know, there's been a lot of trial balloons and suggestions and retrenchments on the topic, but definitely structural tax increases. We know that's a part of it, in exchange for fleeting reforms that really do nothing to change the trajectory of the state or reorganize and restructure systems that are not financeable or are wholly hostile to capital formation and job creation in this state going forward. This looks like it's coming back this coming week, where the Senate, some Republicans and some Democrats are going to try and ram this through and push it to the House and then to the governor's desk, where the governor has, per his budget address, suggested open-mindedness on structural tax hikes, different than what he has been saying for the first 2 years of his term. Yeah,
this is like Halloween, Dan, or Friday the 13th movies that have multiple sequels. You think it's dead, and it's not. And the reason why it's not dead is because the supposed hero in these movies is supposed to be Governor Rauner, right? And when he gives an address like he did, and he continues to sort of leave the open, idea of it publicly, then it gives political room on the Republican side, especially, for this idea to continue to fester and gain time and gain momentum. And that's why it won't die, because Governor Rauner won't come out and say, I'm not going to deal with this, and kill it. That's why it won't die.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what Governor Rauner's reasoning is, but he's essentially adopted the posture of leading from behind. I'm not going to weigh in on issues until and unless I'm forced to. Well, that's not really what an executive does, whether it's an executive of a state or an executive of any organization. You're the vision guy. This is the direction we should go. And, kind of the cut and paste of the turnaround agenda and talking about it in an abstract way rather than in concrete, specific terms just isn't holding water anymore. Interestingly, this week, the Wall Street Journal opined on Illinois' situation in an editorial called Illinois Tax Heist, in which they write in pertinent part, despite its conciliatory tone talking about Bruce Rauner's budget address, the speech was greeted with derision by state Springfield mafia that assumes it now has a governor where it wants him. Chicago Democrat Kwame Raoul, state senator from Hyde Park area, found heretofore unknown reserves of fiscal conservatism. I've heard a lot of specific spending, but I didn't hear specific revenue, said Raoul. It's like Christmas without having any money. He would know, writes the Journal, the deal now being crafted in the state Senate would increase the state's flat income tax rate close to what it was in 2011 under Quinn. The Journal notes that despite revisiting a policy that was tried just a handful of years ago, an elevated income tax produced one of the country's weakest state economic recoveries, with bond rating declines in Chicago and staggering deficits statewide. The Journal stopped short of forcing Rauner to take a position, but it does suggest they understand that Rauner is wobbly. Rauner is perhaps on the cusp of caving, and based on their posture on the substantive policy, I don't think he's going to be treated well even by the Wall Street Journal editorial board, which has been a cheerleader for Rauner in his first 2 years, if he were to cave.
Well, the reason, Dan, that they've been a cheerleader is because of who he said he was going to be and who he was initially up until right about now. And so, look, Governor Rauner, we've talked about this before, he cannot be taking his support, whether it's the Wall Street Journal, whether it's, people on the right, for granted. And that's what he's doing here. And there isn't enough vote elsewhere to make up for it if he's going to run for re-election again. And the other point about that article that I think is the most telling is when they reflect back to 2011, right? This has already been tried, and it already failed. And all the promises that were made about what we were going to do with our debt structure with the 2011 tax increase, that didn't materialize. So to go through this again, thinking it's going to have a different outcome, and for Rauner to participate in that is not just a policy mistake, it's a giant political miscalculation.
Well, the Journal goes on to conclude in its editorial, that the Democrats are trying to wait out Mr. Rauner, who would like some kind of reform victory to take to the voters if he runs for re-election in 2018. If, not when. That's interesting. If he doesn't agree to a tax hike, they figure they can use their endless obstruction to elect a Democrat. It's the kind of political cynicism is why this once great state is in economic decline, the Wall Street Journal describing Illinois. I don't disagree with any of that. I guess the key phrase there is some kind of reform victory. And so the key problem with the Senate grand bargain is it's not much of a bargain. It's just a surrender. And so you don't have a reform victory other than one that you can essentially try and convince the public of rhetorically, even though it won't substantively improve their quality of life or opportunities. And so that's the fundamental problem with what's being proposed in the Senate. It's not a personality thing. It's a substance thing. And this reform victory is a Pyrrhic one, at least as proposed so far by Radogno and Cullerton. And it seems to me Rauner has to have the fortitude that he's exhibited for most of his first 2 years to explain to the public exactly that if they reintroduce what they have been pushing for the last several months.
Yeah, so he will not be able to sell this even rhetorically as a victory, Dan, in the upcoming election, because not enough people on his right will believe it, and so they will abandon him. And then the left will use it as a form of capitulation and a lack of leadership in how they beat him. So he's going to get hit from both sides. And so he won't be able to sell it rhetorically. And the people of the state are too smart. People who are engaged are too smart to be fooled by this if there is no life improvement. So it's a lose no matter which way he goes.